I thought my life had ended when everyone I loved moved on, and I was left alone in silence. Then I discovered that purpose, joy, and connection can be recreated even after loss, right in my own kitchen. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old. For most of my life, I was a wife and a mother, always busy taking care of others, making sure everyone around me was fed, clothed, and loved. When my children grew up and moved away, and after my husband passed, I found myself in a quiet house that felt colder than I had ever remembered it being. The silence was heavy, not peaceful, and every room seemed to echo with memories that reminded me of what I had lost. Some mornings I would wake up and stare at the ceiling, wondering how I had arrived here, feeling like a shadow in my own home. I asked myself questions I had never thought I would have to face. Who am I if I am no longer a mother in need of tending, or a wife with someone to care for? What is left for me when all my roles have shifted and my life feels like it has been paused indefinitely? There was a time when the house was full of laughter, noise, arguments, and love. I remembered making breakfast while my children bickered over cereal choices, and my husband would make a joke that would make everyone groan but secretly laugh. Those moments were gone now, replaced by silence that pressed against my ears in the late afternoon. I knew I could not go on waiting for life to find me again, because it would not. I realized that I had to create my own purpose, and that realization terrified me and excited me in equal measure. I looked around the kitchen one morning and noticed the familiar clutter of utensils, pans, and old cookbooks stacked on a shelf. For years, I had used this space for daily routines without really appreciating it, but now it seems like a small island of warmth in an otherwise cold house. I decided then that I would start with something I knew well, something I could control, and that would be the first step back into myself. Cooking had always been a quiet joy, something I did for the people I loved, never for myself. But now, I wanted to do it differently. I pulled out an old cookbook, the corners worn and pages yellowed with time, and I opened it as if it were a map to a world I had forgotten. I started experimenting, trying recipes that I had always meant to make but never had the chance. I chopped vegetables more carefully than I had in years, measured ingredients with intention, and allowed myself to enjoy the process rather than rushing through it. At first, my attempts were clumsy. The soup would boil over, or the bread would be too dense. I laughed at myself, the sound strange and foreign in the empty house. But it was a good kind of laughter, the kind that reminded me I was still alive. Slowly, the kitchen transformed into a laboratory of discovery. I began making dishes I had never dared to try before, combining flavors in ways that surprised me. I researched healthy meals, learning about ingredients that could nourish not just the body, but the soul. Each recipe became a small adventure, a chance to prove to myself that I was capable of creating something beautiful and worthwhile. As I worked in the kitchen, I noticed subtle changes in myself. My energy returned, and I felt lighter, as if the act of making something with care was lifting a weight I had carried without realizing it. My moods shifted. Moments of sadness still came, but they were no longer overwhelming. I looked forward to mornings when I could experiment with new recipes, slice fresh herbs, and watch the sunlight filter through the window onto the counter. The kitchen became a sanctuary, a place where I could be fully present, fully alive. I began documenting what I made, taking photos of my dishes, writing notes about what worked and what did not. I did not do it for anyone else. I did it to honor myself and the journey I was on. The sense of accomplishment was intoxicating, and I realized that I had been depriving myself of this feeling for decades, focused so completely on others that I had forgotten to nurture my own spirit. Gradually, the silence of my house softened. I invited a friend over to try a new dish, and her presence brought warmth back into the rooms that had felt empty for so long. We laughed, shared stories, and I felt connected in a way that I had not in years. That small gathering gave me the courage to invite more people, first a few relatives, then more friends, and eventually my children. When they arrived, the house hummed with life again. The conversations, the laughter, and even the small disagreements over recipes made me feel alive and present. I had created something that was more than food, I had created a space of connection, a place where memories could be made and relationships could be strengthened. In cooking for myself and for others, I discovered a sense of purpose I thought had been lost forever. I also discovered that joy could be cultivated through the simplest of acts, like chopping vegetables, stirring a pot, or plating a dish with care. Each step reminded me that I was not done yet, that there was still time to grow, to learn, and to love life again. I started to think about the future in ways I had stopped doing. I planned meals, experimented with seasonal ingredients, and even considered taking a small cooking class to refine my skills. My body responded to these changes as well. I felt stronger, more energized, and more capable of taking care of myself. The act of cooking had become a form of self-care, a ritual that nourished my body, mind, and spirit simultaneously. My outlook shifted from one of waiting and mourning to one of engagement and curiosity. I no longer felt trapped by my age or circumstances. Instead, I felt empowered by my own actions and the choices I was making to reclaim my life. The kitchen had become a stage for transformation, and I was both the director and the main character in this story of rediscovery. In this space, I could be creative, thoughtful, and deliberate, and I could share that creativity with others in meaningful ways. Over time, I realized that this was not just about cooking. It was about learning to love myself again, to embrace my abilities and my passions, and to find joy in the everyday moments that I had once overlooked. Each meal I prepared was a declaration of independence, a way of saying to myself that I mattered and that my life still had richness to offer. This journey has been slow, sometimes frustrating, and often humbling, but it has been transformative. I now wake up each day with a sense of purpose, looking forward to the small adventures that lie ahead in my kitchen. The once quiet house is now filled with warmth, conversation, and the scent of meals that bring people together. I am Elaine. I am 63, and I have found my way back to life, one recipe at a time, learning that the smallest acts of care can rebuild a life in ways I never imagined possible. I never thought I would feel this alive again, yet here I am, moving through my days with a sense of curiosity and excitement I had long forgotten. Each morning, I rise with the sunlight streaming through my kitchen window, feeling the warmth on my face and a quiet determination in my chest. I make coffee and take a moment to breathe, to appreciate that I am here, that I am capable of still creating, still loving, still being. The kitchen, once just a place to prepare meals out of necessity, has become my sanctuary, my studio, and my classroom all at once. I experiment with ingredients I had never used before, exploring the textures, the colors, and the aromas, letting my senses guide me as much as the recipes themselves. There is a rhythm to this work that calms my mind, a kind of meditation in the chopping, stirring, and plating. I feel grounded, present, and fully alive in a way that surprises me every single day. I discovered that the act of preparing food is not merely about nourishment. It is about care, attention, and a gentle form of creativity that feeds both the body and the soul. I started to notice small changes in myself, subtle shifts that felt monumental. My posture improved as I moved more confidently through the kitchen. My skin glowed from eating the fresh, wholesome meals I created. My thoughts felt clearer, my mood steadier, and the anxiety that had clung to me in those early, lonely months began to dissipate. I realized that by investing in myself, by dedicating time and energy to something I loved, I was reclaiming not just my days, but my life. I began to keep a journal of my recipes, jotting down notes, small tweaks, and observations. Some days I felt like a scientist, some days like an artist, and on the best days, I felt both simultaneously. I photographed my dishes, arranging them with care on plates that I chose because they made me happy, not because anyone else would ever see them. This was my private celebration of self, a ritual of acknowledgement and gratitude for the life I had, the resilience I had discovered, and the joy I could cultivate. Eventually, the desire to share this joy crept in. I invited a close friend over to taste a new recipe I had perfected. Her presence was like sunlight entering a room that had been dark for years. We laughed, shared stories, and connected in ways that reminded me of the warmth and intimacy I had longed for. That small gathering sparked a ripple effect. I began inviting others, friends, distant relatives, and eventually my children, creating spaces where connection could flourish once more. Every gathering, no matter how small, reminded me that the kitchen was more than a room. It was a vessel for relationships, memories, and joy. I reveled in the process of hosting, setting the table with care, arranging flowers, and ensuring that every detail made the experience feel special. It became a practice of love, a way to show myself and others that life could be beautiful even after loss, even after years of solitude. My children's visits were particularly transformative. Watching them walk through the door, their eyes lighting up at the sight of a table spread with dishes I had created, filled me with a profound sense of accomplishment and belonging. They noticed the effort, the care, and the thought I put into each meal, and it reminded me that even after life has changed dramatically, we can still nurture connections and create new moments of joy. With each visit, my confidence grew. My heart swelled with gratitude, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I began to see my age not as a limitation, but as a canvas, a rich backdrop on which I could paint new experiences, learn new skills, and savor each moment with intention. Cooking became a metaphor for life itself. Every recipe, successful or imperfect, taught me patience, creativity, and the value of persistence. Every dish I prepared and every meal I shared became a testament to the fact that life could still be vibrant, meaningful, and full of love, no matter what stage we are in. I started exploring different cuisines, learning about ingredients and techniques from cultures I had only read about in books. I experimented with textures, flavors, and presentation, allowing my imagination to guide me rather than strict adherence to tradition. This exploration ignited a sense of wonder and curiosity that had lain dormant for too long. I found myself taking pleasure in the small details, noticing how sunlight hit the countertop, how herbs released their fragrance when crushed, and how the sizzle of vegetables in a hot pan could lift my spirits in an instant. The kitchen was no longer just a room. It was an ecosystem where every sound, smell, and movement contributed to my sense of well-being and joy. Alongside the cooking, I nurtured my body in ways I had neglected for years. I moved with intention, walked daily, and paid attention to how my body responded to the nourishment I provided it. I slept more soundly. My mind felt sharper, and the weight of grief and loneliness began to ease. I realized that taking care of myself was not selfish. It was necessary, and it allowed me to give to others from a place of fullness rather than depletion. I also began to find joy in sharing my journey beyond my immediate circle. I connected with others who shared a love for cooking, exchanged ideas, and learned from their experiences. It reminded me that community can exist in many forms, even if not always physically present, and that connection can be cultivated in countless ways. My home, once quiet and still, now echoed with laughter, conversation, and the comforting sounds of cooking. The smells of herbs, spices, and fresh ingredients became a constant reminder that life was abundant and that happiness could be created intentionally. I understood that while I could not control every aspect of life, I could control how I chose to engage with it, and that choice had the power to transform not just my days, but my entire outlook. Each evening, as I cleaned up after a meal, I felt a sense of satisfaction and pride. The act of creating, nurturing, and sharing had become a form of meditation, a practice that anchored me and gave structure to my days. I found peace in the repetition, joy in the discoveries, and confidence in my growing abilities. This journey has taught me that life does not end with loss, that solitude does not have to be synonymous with emptiness, and that purpose can be rediscovered at any age. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have learned that the smallest acts of care for myself can ripple outward, creating beauty, connection, and fulfillment in ways I could never have imagined. Every dish I make, every friend I invite, and every moment I savor is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the endless possibilities that exist when we choose to step forward and engage fully with our own lives. I never expected that the simple act of stepping into my kitchen could transform my life so profoundly. Yet here I am, sitting at the counter, reflecting on the journey that has brought me to this place of renewed purpose and joy. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old, and for the first time in many years, I feel fully present in my own life. There were moments after my husband passed and my children had moved away that I questioned whether I would ever find meaning again. The house felt empty, the days long, and I would often sit by the window, staring at nothing in particular, feeling a hollowness that seemed impossible to fill. I thought I had lost the part of myself that mattered, the part that had always been tied to taking care of others and creating warmth and comfort in a home. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to remember that life is not just about what we lose, it is also about what we can still create. I started with small things, little experiments in my kitchen, a new recipe here, a slightly different way of arranging vegetables there. At first, it felt awkward and uncertain, as though I was relearning how to move through life with my own hands instead of simply responding to the needs of others. The first time I perfectly roasted a tray of vegetables with herbs I had never used before, I felt a spark of pride and satisfaction that I had not experienced in years. That single success reminded me that I was capable of learning, of creating, and of enjoying the process rather than being consumed by the outcome. Cooking became my therapy, my meditation, and my adventure all at once. I would spend hours experimenting with flavors, textures, and colors, letting my curiosity guide me. I learned to make dishes that nourished not only my body, but also my spirit. Meals that felt like celebrations of life rather than chores to be completed. I began documenting my recipes, photographing them, writing notes about what worked and what did not. And in doing so, I realized I was reclaiming my sense of agency, my ability to make choices that mattered to me. With each meal I prepared, I felt a growing confidence in myself and in the life I was building. It was a slow, gradual transformation, but it was deeply satisfying. As I grew more comfortable in my kitchen, I started to invite friends over, first one at a time, then in small groups. Their laughter, conversation, and genuine enjoyment of the food I prepared filled my home with life and warmth once again. I discovered that the act of sharing a meal was not just about the food. It was about connection, intimacy, and the subtle, powerful ways we nurture one another. Watching my friends savor a dish I had created, seeing their eyes light up with pleasure, reminded me that even after years of solitude and grief, I could still touch lives and bring happiness into the world. Encouraged by these small successes, I invited relatives and eventually my children. Each visit brought a renewed sense of fulfillment and purpose, and I noticed that my home, which had once seemed cold and empty, now vibrated with energy, stories, and laughter. I realized that by taking the time to cultivate my passions, I had created opportunities for connection, for memory making, and for love to flow once more. I also noticed profound changes within myself. The more I engaged with my kitchen and the people around me, the more my own body and mind responded. I felt stronger, more energized, and increasingly capable of handling life's challenges. My mood stabilized, my sleep improved, and I began to approach each day with a sense of anticipation rather than dread. It was as if my own vitality had been waiting quietly, ready to be awakened by the simple act of nurturing myself and embracing my passion. I started to explore cooking in ways I had never before considered. I experimented with global cuisines, unique ingredients, and inventive techniques, not because I sought recognition, but because the process itself thrilled me. Each experiment was a lesson, each failure an opportunity to improve, and each success a celebration of creativity and resilience. I learned to appreciate the textures of food, the aroma of fresh herbs, and the subtle interplay of flavors that could transform a meal into an experience. In these moments, I felt an intimacy with life that had been absent for years, a deep awareness of the beauty in small details, and the satisfaction that comes from crafting something with care and intention. As my confidence in the kitchen grew, I began to think about other areas of my life that had been neglected. I arranged a small herb garden outside my kitchen window so I could use fresh ingredients daily, adding a sense of purpose to my mornings. I redecorated my shelves and counters, adding touches that brought me joy and made the space feel more personal and inviting. Each small act of attention and creativity reinforced the idea that my life was mine to shape, and that I had the ability to fill it with meaning, beauty, and joy. These changes rippled beyond the walls of my kitchen. My relationships flourished as I shared my cooking, my time, and my energy with others. Friends began reaching out to me more often. Relatives started visiting, and my children came to appreciate not only the meals I prepared, but also the woman I had become. My home became a hub of warmth and life, a place where people felt welcomed, nourished, and valued. I found that the love and care I poured into my cooking extended naturally into the care I gave myself, creating a cycle of empowerment and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. Each day, I wake with a sense of gratitude and anticipation, knowing that I will engage in acts that nourish both body and spirit. I reflect on the years of loneliness and grief, recognizing them as part of my journey, but no longer allowing them to define me. I understand now that life is not measured solely by what we endure, but by how we respond, how we create, and how we continue to grow. Cooking has become my canvas, my meditation, and my expression, a way to cultivate joy and meaning with my own hands. I have learned to embrace the process, the imperfections, and the discoveries. And through this engagement, I have rediscovered my capacity for happiness, connection, and love. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I can honestly say that I have never felt more alive, more capable, or more present in my own life. The journey is ongoing, and each day brings new opportunities to create, to connect, and to celebrate the beauty that exists in both the ordinary and the extraordinary. I have discovered that even in the later chapters of life, there is room for reinvention, for joy, and for purpose, and that by taking deliberate steps to nurture ourselves, we can transform our worlds in ways we never imagined possible. My kitchen remains the heart of my transformation, a place where I continue to learn, to create, and to share. And in doing so, I have reclaimed not just my home, but my life. I wake each morning with a sense of quiet excitement, knowing that the day ahead is mine to shape, mine to fill with purpose and joy. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old. And for the first time in a long time, I feel fully alive in my own skin. The days after my husband passed and my children moved on were long and heavy, filled with an emptiness that seemed impossible to lift. The house, once alive with laughter, conversation, and the sounds of daily life, felt like a museum of memories, each room echoing with the past. I would sit for hours, staring at the walls, listening to the quiet, and wondering how I had come to exist in a space that no longer felt like home. There were moments when I questioned whether I would ever feel joy again, or whether the part of me that had thrived on creating, nurturing, and connecting had quietly vanished along with the years I spent caring for others. But one day, I realized that the power to create meaning still rested in my own hands. I started small, pulling out old cookbooks that I had not looked at in years, opening them carefully, as if each page held a secret that could restore my spirit. I experimented with recipes I had always wanted to try, but had never had the time or courage to explore. At first, my hands were clumsy, my measurements imperfect, and my confidence fragile. But each attempt, successful or not, reminded me that I was capable of learning, growing, and creating something valuable for myself. Cooking became a form of meditation, a practice in presence and attention. I discovered that chopping vegetables, stirring a pot, and arranging a plate with care was not merely an act of preparation, but a way to connect with life, to nurture myself in ways I had long neglected. Each meal I made became a celebration of resilience and creativity, a testament to the fact that even after loss and solitude, we are capable of finding joy and purpose again. Slowly, I noticed changes in my body and mind. My energy returned, my sleep deepened, and the melancholy that had clung to me for so long began to lift. I felt lighter, not just physically, but emotionally, as if the act of caring for myself through cooking had awakened a strength that had been dormant for years. I started photographing my dishes, writing notes, and reflecting on what worked and what did not to impress anyone else, but to honor the process and the growth I was experiencing. Each small victory built my confidence and reminded me that I was reclaiming my life, one intentional act at a time. Encouraged by this newfound sense of purpose, I began inviting friends over, first one or two at a time, to share the meals I created. Their laughter and conversation breathed life back into my home, transforming it from a silent space into a place of warmth and connection. I realized that cooking for others was not just about feeding them, it was about creating experiences, building relationships, and offering a piece of myself through the care I put into each dish. These gatherings grew over time. I invited relatives and eventually my children, and with each visit, I felt the walls of loneliness crumble. The house, once a vessel of isolation, now hummed with stories, laughter, and shared moments that reminded me of the importance of connection and love. Hosting these meals became a ritual, a way to anchor myself in the present while celebrating the richness of life that still existed around me. I began experimenting more boldly, exploring new ingredients, cooking techniques, and global cuisines. I allowed my creativity to guide me, embracing both successes and failures as part of the process. I discovered joy in the small details, the way fresh herbs release their fragrance when crushed, the sound of a pan sizzling, the subtle transformation of flavors as a dish comes together. These moments reminded me that life itself is composed of small, beautiful details, and that by paying attention to them, we can cultivate a sense of wonder and fulfillment regardless of our age or circumstances. Alongside my cooking, I nurtured my body in ways I had previously overlooked. I walked daily, moved with intention, and paid close attention to how the nourishment I provided myself affected my energy and well-being. I found that caring for my body reinforced the care I was giving to my spirit, creating a holistic sense of health and vitality that I had long taken for granted. My outlook on life shifted gradually. I no longer saw age as a limitation, but as an opportunity to explore, learn, and create without pressure or expectation. Each day became a canvas for discovery, a space in which I could shape my environment, my skills, and my experiences in ways that brought me satisfaction and pride. The kitchen, once simply a room, became my studio, my sanctuary, and my classroom. Every meal I prepared, every herb I planted, every experiment I tried was a declaration of independence, a reminder that I could still shape my days and create meaning for myself and others. The joy I discovered in this process extended beyond cooking. I noticed a renewed curiosity in the world, a willingness to try new things, and a confidence that carried over into interactions with friends, family, and even strangers. I became more attentive, more present, and more intentional in how I approached life, realizing that the smallest acts, performed with care and attention, have the power to transform both our inner and outer worlds. The emotional impact of this transformation was profound. I felt a renewed sense of connection to myself and those around me, a deep gratitude for the ability to nurture, create, and share. The meals I prepared became more than food. They were experiences, opportunities to build memories, and a way to communicate love and care without words. I saw how sharing my journey inspired others, reminding me that purpose and joy can ripple outward, affecting not only our own lives, but also the lives of those we touch. I also became more reflective, taking time each day to consider the choices I was making and the life I was shaping. I realized that the journey through grief, loneliness, and loss had not been wasted. It had prepared me to fully appreciate the richness of life when I chose to engage with it intentionally. My resilience, creativity, and curiosity had all been strengthened by the challenges I had faced, and now they fueled my renewed sense of self. As I look around my home, filled with the sights, smells, and sounds of meals lovingly prepared, I feel a deep sense of accomplishment and contentment. The once empty rooms echo with laughter, conversation, and the subtle hum of activity that reminds me daily that I am alive and capable of creating a life filled with meaning and joy. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have discovered that even in the later chapters of life, transformation is possible. By nurturing myself, embracing my passions, and sharing generously with others, I have reclaimed not only my home, but also my sense of purpose, vitality, and connection. Each day is an opportunity to learn, create, and savor the beauty in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. My kitchen is more than a room. It is the heart of my journey, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a space where I continue to grow, explore, and celebrate the fullness of life. Through these experiences, I have learned that joy is not something that happens to us passively, but something we cultivate actively, with intention, love, and courage, and that the act of creating, nurturing, and sharing can breathe life into even the quietest, loneliest corners of our existence. I never imagined that the quiet, empty house I returned to each day could become a place of such discovery, growth, and joy. Yet here I am, reflecting on the journey that has transformed not just my home, but my entire life. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old, and I feel more alive now than I have in decades. After my husband passed and my children moved on with their lives, I spent months lost in a fog of loneliness and grief, wandering from room to room in a house that seemed too big and too quiet. I would sit at the kitchen table for hours, staring at the countertops, the cupboards, and the dishes that had once been so central to daily life, feeling as though my own purpose had vanished, along with the roles I had long inhabited. It was a strange and painful awakening, realizing that the routines and responsibilities that had defined me for so many years were no longer there, and with them had gone the constant sense of usefulness and connection that I had taken for granted. The emptiness pressed in on me, and I began to understand that I could not wait for life to find me again. I had to create meaning for myself, and I had to start somewhere, even if that somewhere was simply my own kitchen. I began by revisiting recipes I had loved and never had time to perfect. I pulled out old cookbooks, turning the fragile yellowed pages with care, remembering the dishes I had once prepared for my family and the joy that had come from creating something nourishing with my own hand. The act of cooking became both a refuge and a challenge, a way to reintroduce structure, creativity, and care into my daily life. At first, I was clumsy, impatient, and unsure. Soups would overboil, bread would not rise, and I would sigh in frustration at my own mistakes. Yet in those moments, I discovered something essential, that the process itself held value, and that learning, failing, and trying again could awaken a sense of purpose I had long forgotten. Slowly, the kitchen transformed into a space of exploration and renewal. I experimented with new ingredients, flavors, and techniques, letting my curiosity guide me rather than a strict adherence to recipe. I learned to chop, stir, and season with intention, noticing how the simple act of paying attention could calm my mind and center my spirit. Each dish became a small triumph, a reminder that I was capable of creation, that I could nurture both myself and others, and that life, even after loss, could still hold beauty and joy. As I immersed myself in cooking, I began to notice changes in myself. My energy increased, my mood stabilized, and I found a sense of anticipation in my mornings that had long been absent. The act of feeding myself well, of taking the time to create something beautiful and nourishing, became a form of self-respect and self-care that I had previously overlooked. I began photographing my meals, noting what worked and what did not, and found satisfaction in documenting my progress and growth. It was not about impressing anyone else. It was about honoring the life I was rebuilding and celebrating my own efforts and achievements. Encouraged by these small victories, I began inviting friends into my home. At first, just one or two, and then gradually more, creating spaces for connection, laughter, and conversation. The warmth that filled my house during these gatherings reminded me of the power of sharing, of the joy that comes from nourishing not just the body, but the heart and soul of those around you. Each meal became an opportunity to connect, to create memories, and to reestablish bonds that had loosened over time. Inviting friends led naturally to inviting family, and eventually, my children came to visit. Seeing them enjoy the meals I had prepared and noticing the effort, care, and love I had put into each dish brought a profound sense of fulfillment. The once empty house was now alive with energy, stories, and laughter, and I realized that through cooking and hospitality, I had rebuilt not just my home, but also my sense of connection, purpose, and identity. My confidence and creativity flourished as I explored more challenging recipes and techniques. I experimented with different cuisines, ingredients I had never used, and combinations that pushed me beyond my comfort zone. Each experiment, whether successful or not, became a lesson in patience, perseverance, and the joy of discovery. I began to notice how my senses, so long dulled by grief and routine, were waking up again. The aroma of fresh herbs, the sound of a pan sizzling, the vivid colors of vegetables and spices. These sensory experiences became daily reminders that life is rich with small, beautiful moments if we allow ourselves to notice and engage with them fully. Alongside my culinary adventures, I nurtured my physical and emotional health. I walked daily, moved with intention, and paid attention to how my body responded to the wholesome meals I created. I discovered that caring for myself holistically, mind, body, and spirit, amplified the benefits of the work I was doing in the kitchen. The energy, clarity, and vitality I felt reinforced the idea that investing in oneself is not selfish, but necessary to live fully and to share generously with others. The process of rediscovery extended into every aspect of my life. I redecorated parts of my home, arranged a small herb garden, and curated spaces that made me feel happy, calm, and inspired. Each small change reinforced the understanding that I was reclaiming control over my life, choosing to fill it with intentional acts of beauty, care, and joy. Hosting gatherings, experimenting with recipes, and sharing meals became a metaphor for life itself, that creation, connection, and attention to detail can transform ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. I reflected on the years of loneliness and grief, understanding them as part of my story, but no longer allowing them to define me. I realized that resilience, curiosity, and creativity are qualities that can be nurtured and cultivated at any stage of life. The choices I make daily, how I spend my time, how I care for myself, and how I engage with others, shape not only my experience, but also the atmosphere and energy of my home and the lives I touch. I have learned that age is not a limitation, but a backdrop against which we can paint new experiences, embrace new challenges, and savor the richness of each day. The kitchen, once merely functional, has become the heart of my transformation. It is a space where I exercise creativity, nurture relationships, and cultivate self-awareness and joy. Each meal I prepare is a statement of agency, a declaration that I can still create, influence, and contribute meaningfully to my own life and the lives of others. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have discovered that joy, purpose, and connection can be rediscovered through intention, care, and courage. By embracing the process of creation, by nurturing myself and others, and by paying attention to the beauty in everyday moments, I have built a life that is fulfilling, rich, and meaningful. Every day is an opportunity to learn, grow, and create. And through the simple yet profound act of cooking, I have reclaimed not just my kitchen, but my spirit, my confidence, and my joy. The journey continues, each day bringing new lessons, discoveries, and moments of wonder, and I embrace it fully, grateful for the life I have rebuilt and the endless possibilities that lie ahead. I never realized how much life could change when I decided to take small steps toward caring for myself and embracing my passions. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old, and for the first time in years, I feel a sense of purpose and joy that fills not only my days, but also my spirit. After my husband passed and my children moved on with their own lives, I spent months wandering through my home, feeling the weight of silence and the ache of absence. Every room seemed to whisper memories that I could not hold, and the routines that had once given my life structure were gone, leaving me adrift. I knew I had to find a way to reclaim my life, to rediscover meaning, and to reconnect with myself in ways I had long neglected. It began with the kitchen, a place I had always known as a hub of care and nourishment, but now became a sanctuary, a space where I could explore, create, and reconnect with the parts of myself that had been dormant for too long. I pulled out old cookbooks, studied recipes I had never tried, and allowed myself to experiment without fear of failure or judgment. At first, I was clumsy and impatient, burning dishes, over-seasoning meals, and laughing at my mistakes. But with each attempt, I learned, adapted, and grew more confident. Cooking became a meditation, a ritual of presence and care that nourished not only my body, but also my mind and soul. Each meal I prepared was an act of self-respect and creativity, a reminder that I could still bring beauty and intention into my life. As I immersed myself in this process, I began to notice subtle but profound changes within myself. My energy returned, my sleep deepened, and the heaviness of grief began to lift. I felt lighter, both physically and emotionally, and the sense of hopelessness that had once dominated my mornings slowly gave way to anticipation and excitement. I photographed my dishes, wrote notes about flavors and techniques, and reflected on the progress I was making. I realized that this was more than cooking. It was a reclamation of agency, a way to assert that I mattered, that my life still had value, and that joy could be cultivated through deliberate effort. Encouraged by these small victories, I began to invite friends into my home. The first few visits were tentative, just one or two people at a time, but their laughter and conversation filled the spaces that had been empty for so long. I discovered that cooking for others was not just about feeding them, it was about creating experiences, fostering connection, and sharing a piece of myself through the care I put into each dish. These gatherings grew, and I began inviting family, eventually welcoming my children to my table. Their smiles, their enjoyment, and their recognition of my effort brought a profound sense of fulfillment and reinforced the idea that life could still be vibrant, meaningful, and full of love, even after years of solitude. As I grew more confident in the kitchen, I experimented with new ingredients, techniques, and global cuisines. I allowed my curiosity to guide me, embracing both successes and failures as opportunities to learn. I discovered joy in the smallest details, the way fresh herbs release their fragrance, the sound of a pan sizzling, the vibrant colors of vegetables and spices, and realized that life itself is composed of these moments, waiting to be noticed, appreciated, and savored. Alongside my culinary exploration, I nurtured my physical and emotional well-being. I walked daily, moved with intention, and paid attention to how the meals I prepared affected my body. I felt stronger, more energetic, and more capable of engaging fully with life. Caring for myself holistically reinforced the value of my efforts in the kitchen, creating a sense of harmony and vitality that I had long overlooked. I began to approach each day with a sense of anticipation and creativity, no longer weighed down by age or past losses. Every morning offered an opportunity to experiment with flavors, colors, and textures, to learn something new, and to create experiences that could bring joy to myself and those around me. The kitchen became a stage for transformation, where each dish was an act of expression, a declaration of presence, and a symbol of resilience. I found fulfillment in the act of sharing meals, in the stories and laughter that filled my home, and in the small, deliberate choices I made to create beauty and meaning in everyday life. I realized that joy is not something that happens passively. It must be cultivated, nurtured, and intentionally embraced. Each meal, each conversation, and each moment spent in care of myself or others became part of a larger tapestry of purpose and satisfaction. The house, once quiet and lonely, now echoed with life, stories, and laughter. I took pride in arranging the table, decorating with fresh flowers, and setting the atmosphere for connection and warmth. Each detail was a reflection of the care I now extended to myself and others, and I reveled in the sense of accomplishment that came from creating a space where people felt welcomed, nourished, and valued. As I explored new cuisines and techniques, I noticed a renewed curiosity and zest for life that had been missing for years. I experimented boldly, pushed the boundaries of my comfort zone, and allowed creativity to flow freely. I found that mistakes became lessons, challenges became opportunities, and successes became celebrations, each contributing to my growing confidence and self-assurance. Beyond cooking, I became more intentional in how I spent my time, engaging with the world around me, fostering connections, and embracing activities that brought fulfillment and joy. I arranged a small herb garden, redecorated parts of my home, and curated spaces that made me feel alive and inspired. Each small act of care reinforced the sense that my life was mine to shape and that I could create experiences, relationships, and memories that were meaningful and joyful. I reflected on the years of grief and loneliness not as wasted time, but as a necessary journey that had prepared me to appreciate the richness of life and the beauty of small, deliberate action. Resilience, curiosity, and creativity became guiding principles, reminding me that we can continue to grow, explore, and find joy at any age. The kitchen remained the heart of my transformation, a place where I exercised agency, nurtured relationships, and cultivated a sense of wonder and satisfaction. Each meal I prepared, each herb I harvested, and each gathering I hosted became an affirmation that life is rich with possibility, that even in later years, we can reinvent ourselves and embrace new experiences with courage and intention. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have discovered that through care, creativity, and connection, we can reclaim our lives, cultivate joy, and build meaningful experiences even after loss and solitude. Each day is an opportunity to learn, grow, and create. And through the deliberate acts of nurturing myself and others, I have rebuilt not just my home, but my sense of purpose, vitality, and fulfillment. My journey continues, and each day brings new lessons, adventures, and moments of wonder, reminding me that life can always be rediscovered, celebrated, and fully lived. The transformation of my life began in the quiet corners of my kitchen, a space that had always been familiar yet overlooked, and it became the stage upon which I rediscovered myself. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old, and I never imagined that such simple daily rituals could awaken a sense of purpose and joy that had felt lost for so long. In the months following my husband's passing and my children moving away, I wandered through my home like a ghost of myself, observing the empty rooms, the silent hallways, and the memories etched into every surface. The house, once full of life, now felt cold and distant, and I questioned whether I would ever feel connected, capable, or alive again. The routines that had once defined me, feeding my family, tending to my husband, maintaining a home full of energy and love, were gone, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. But one morning, I decided to begin again, not by searching for meaning outside myself, but by creating it within the walls I already inhabited. I returned to the kitchen, pulling out old cookbooks, some yellowed and worn, others barely touched, and allowed myself to experiment with recipes I had long admired but never attempted. The first attempts were imperfect. Soups boiled over, bread did not rise, and I laughed at my own clumsiness. Yet in each misstep, I discovered patience, persistence, and a subtle, growing sense of confidence that told me I was capable of learning and creating once more. Cooking became a meditation, a practice of presence, and a means of reconnecting with a part of myself that had been quieted by grief and solitude. Each meal, carefully prepared and plated, became an act of care for both body and spirit. I began noticing small but profound changes within myself. My energy returned, my mood stabilized, and a lightness emerged in my days that I had not felt in years. The act of creating something nourishing and beautiful for myself was transformative, reminding me that even in the midst of loss, I could cultivate life, joy, and purpose. I documented my experiments with photos and notes, not for anyone else, but to honor the process and recognize my growth. These moments of reflection allowed me to see that I was reclaiming not just the kitchen, but also a sense of agency and self-respect that had been missing. Encouraged by these changes, I invited friends into my home, initially one or two at a time, and witnessed the magic that came from sharing what I had created. Their laughter, conversation, and genuine enjoyment filled the empty spaces of my house, replacing silence with warmth and connection. Cooking for others revealed a new layer of purpose. It was not merely about nourishment, but about creating experiences, fostering intimacy, and extending care and love in tangible ways. Gradually, I extended invitations to family and eventually my children. Their presence filled the house with energy, stories, and laughter, and I felt a profound sense of fulfillment as I watched them enjoy the meals I had prepared. I realized that even after years of solitude and grief, I could rebuild connections, nurture relationships, and create new moments of joy that were meaningful and lasting. My confidence and creativity blossomed as I explored more challenging recipes, techniques, and flavors. I experimented with cuisines I had never attempted before, ingredients I had only admired in cookbooks, and combinations that stretched my imagination. I found joy in the small details, the aroma of herbs as they were chopped, the sizzle of a pan as ingredients met heat, the way colors and textures could transform a dish into an experience. Each experiment, regardless of success, was a lesson in patience, resilience, and the pleasure of creation. Alongside my culinary journey, I paid attention to my physical and emotional well-being. Daily walks, intentional movement, and mindful eating became a foundation for the renewed energy I was cultivating. I felt stronger, more vibrant, and more capable of engaging with life fully. Caring for myself holistically reinforced the positive changes in my kitchen, creating a sense of harmony and vitality that had long been absent. My approach to daily life shifted gradually. Age was no longer a limitation, but a backdrop for creativity, growth, and exploration. Each day became an opportunity to experiment, learn, and connect, and I discovered that the simplest acts, performed with care and attention, could yield profound fulfillment. The kitchen remained the center of this transformation, a space where I exercised agency, nurtured relationships, and cultivated a sense of wonder in ordinary moments. Every meal, every herb harvested, and every gathering hosted became a testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of intention. I reflected on the years of grief and loneliness, acknowledging them as necessary chapters that had prepared me to embrace life with renewed gratitude and awareness. I realized that the qualities I had developed, resilience, curiosity, and creativity, were tools I could now wield to shape a life of meaning and joy. Each day offered a chance to deepen my understanding of myself and the world around me, to engage fully with experiences, and to find beauty in even the simplest moments. The home that once felt cold and empty now reverberated with life, stories, and laughter. I took pride in arranging the table, decorating with fresh flowers, and setting an atmosphere of warmth and welcome. Every detail reflected my intentionality, care, and the joy I had cultivated, and I reveled in the satisfaction of creating spaces where people felt valued and connected. Through cooking, hosting, and nurturing, I had discovered the profound truth that joy, purpose, and connection are not given, but created, and that we are capable of reclaiming them at any stage of life. I began to see the beauty in mistakes, the growth in challenges, the celebration in successes, recognizing that each was a vital part of my ongoing journey. Beyond the kitchen, I found myself embracing life with a curiosity and enthusiasm I had not known for decades. I explored new activities, developed skills I had long neglected, and welcomed experiences that stretched my perspective and understanding. The intentionality I cultivated in cooking and self-care rippled outward, transforming my approach to relationships, personal growth, and the way I experienced each day. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have learned that through care, creativity, and connection, life can be reclaimed and enriched even after profound loss. Every day offers opportunities to learn, create, and savor the beauty in ordinary and extraordinary moments alike. My kitchen is not just a room, it is the heart of my transformation, a sanctuary where I continue to grow, nurture, and celebrate the fullness of life. Through these experiences, I have discovered that the smallest acts, performed with intention and love, can cultivate joy, purpose, and connection, and that life's richness is always available to those willing to step forward and embrace it fully. I never imagined that the quiet hours I once spent in loneliness could become the foundation for a life so full of discovery, creativity, and joy. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old, and I have come to realize that even after loss, solitude, and years of routine, life can offer opportunities for transformation, connection, and purpose if we are willing to seek them. After my husband passed and my children moved on with their own lives, I found myself wandering through a home that felt hollow, echoing with memories I could not hold and routines that no longer existed. I spent days moving from room to room, unsure how to fill the emptiness, overwhelmed by the silence, and questioning whether I would ever feel alive again. The routines that had given my life structure and meaning, the preparation of meals, the tending to family needs, the small acts of daily care, were gone, and with them seemed to vanish my sense of self. It was in the quiet of my kitchen, a room that had once been simply functional, that I began to reclaim both myself and my life. I started slowly, revisiting recipes I had always admired but never attempted, pulling out cookbooks that had been tucked away for years, and allowing myself to experiment without fear of failure. The first dishes I attempted were imperfect. Soups boiled over, breads failed to rise, and I laughed at my mistakes. But each attempt reminded me that I was capable of learning, creating, and finding satisfaction in the process rather than the result. Cooking became a meditation, a practice of presence and attention, and a way to reconnect with a part of myself that had long been dormant. Each meal I prepared was an act of care, both for my body and my spirit, a reminder that even in the wake of loss, I could cultivate life, joy, and meaning. As I immersed myself in this work, I noticed subtle but profound changes within myself. My energy returned, my mood stabilized, and I began to feel a lightness in my days that had been absent for years. I photographed my dishes, wrote notes about flavors and techniques, and reflected on my progress. Not to impress anyone else, but to honor the effort I was making and the transformation taking place. These small victories built my confidence and reminded me that I was reclaiming not just the kitchen, but also my sense of agency, creativity, and self-respect. Encouraged by these changes, I began inviting friends over, first one or two at a time, and then gradually larger groups. Their laughter, conversation, and enjoyment filled the empty spaces of my home, replacing silence with warmth and connection. I discovered that cooking for others was not merely about nourishment. It was about creating experiences, fostering intimacy, and offering a piece of myself through the care and attention I put into each dish. These gatherings gradually expanded to include family, and eventually my children came to visit. Watching them savor the meals I had prepared and seeing their recognition of the effort, thought, and love I had invested brought a profound sense of fulfillment and reminded me that life, even after years of solitude, could still be rich with connection and meaning. My confidence and creativity blossomed as I explored more challenging recipes, experimented with new ingredients, and learned techniques I had never attempted before. I found joy in the sensory details of cooking, the aroma of fresh herbs being chopped, the sizzle of a pan, the vibrant colors and textures that could turn a meal into an experience. I realized that life itself is composed of these small, beautiful moments, waiting to be noticed, appreciated, and savored. Alongside my culinary exploration, I nurtured my physical and emotional well-being. I walked daily, moved with intention, and paid attention to how the meals I prepared nourished my body and fueled my energy. I felt stronger, more alert, and more capable of engaging fully with life. Caring for myself holistically reinforced the positive changes I was experiencing in the kitchen, creating a sense of vitality, balance, and harmony that had been absent for years. My approach to daily life transformed. Age became a backdrop for creativity, growth, and exploration rather than a limitation. Each day became an opportunity to experiment, learn, and engage. And I discovered that small acts performed with care and intention could yield profound fulfillment. The kitchen became the heart of this transformation, a space where I exercised agency, nurtured relationships, and cultivated a sense of wonder in the ordinary moments of life. Every meal I prepared, every herb I tended, and every gathering I hosted became a testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of intention. I reflected on the years of grief and loneliness, understanding them as necessary parts of my journey that had prepared me to embrace life with renewed gratitude and awareness. The qualities I developed through that period, resilience, curiosity, and creativity, became tools I could now use to shape a life rich with meaning and joy. Each day offered opportunities to deepen my understanding of myself, to engage fully with experiences, and to appreciate the beauty in both the mundane and the extraordinary. The home that once felt empty now thrummed with life, stories, laughter, and the subtle sounds of cooking and preparation. I found joy in arranging the table, decorating with fresh flowers, and creating an atmosphere of warmth and welcome. Each detail was an expression of care, intentionality, and love, and it reminded me that the spaces we inhabit reflect the attention and energy we bring into them. Through cooking, nurturing, and sharing, I discovered the profound truth that joy and purpose are not given to us passively. They must be cultivated through deliberate action, care, and engagement. I began to see the beauty in mistakes, the growth in challenges, and the celebration in successes, recognizing that all of these elements are part of the tapestry of a fully lived life. Beyond the kitchen, I approached life with curiosity, creativity, and enthusiasm, exploring new activities, developing skills I had long neglected, and welcoming experiences that stretched my understanding and perspective. The intentionality I practiced in the kitchen rippled outward, transforming how I interacted with others, how I approached personal growth, and how I experienced each day. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have learned that through care, creativity, and connection, life can be reclaimed, enriched, and celebrated even after profound loss. Every day is an opportunity to create, learn, and savor the beauty that exists in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. My kitchen is more than a room. It is the heart of my transformation, a sanctuary where I continue to nurture, create, and celebrate life. Through these experiences, I have discovered that even the smallest acts, performed with intention and love, can cultivate joy, purpose, and connection, and that life's richness is always available to those willing to step forward, embrace it, and engage fully with their own journey. The quiet of my home, once heavy with loneliness, has transformed into a canvas for life, creativity, and connection. My name is Elaine, and I am 63 years old, and I have learned that even after years of grief and solitude, life can surprise us with opportunities to grow, explore, and rediscover joy. After my husband passed and my children moved on with their own lives, I spent months wandering through empty rooms, listening to the echoes of the past, and feeling the weight of absence pressing down on me. The routines and roles that had once given my life structure and purpose were gone, me adrift, uncertain how to fill the days that stretched ahead. I found myself drawn almost instinctively to the kitchen, a place that had always been familiar yet somehow overlooked, and it became the space where I began to rebuild both my life and my sense of self. I started with small experiments, revisiting old cookbooks, testing recipes I had admired but never attempted, and allowing myself to make mistakes without fear or judgment. The first attempts were imperfect. Soups overboiled, breads fell flat, and I laughed at my own clumsiness. Yet in each failure, I discovered patience, resilience, and a quiet satisfaction in learning and creating. And slowly, cooking became more than a necessity. It became a form of meditation, a ritual of presence, and a practice of self-nurturing. Each meal I prepared was an act of care for myself, a way to honor my body, my creativity, and my capacity for joy. As I immersed myself in cooking, I began to notice subtle changes within myself. My energy returned, my mood stabilized, and a lightness emerged in my days that had been absent for years. I photographed my dishes, wrote notes on flavors and techniques, and reflected on my progress not to impress others, but to honor the journey I was undertaking. Each small success, each discovery of a new flavor or technique reinforced my confidence and reminded me that I could create meaning and satisfaction in my life, even in the absence of the routines and roles I had lost. Encouraged by these changes, I began to invite friends into my home, initially one or two at a time, and witness the transformative power of connection. Their laughter, conversation, and genuine enjoyment of the meals I prepared filled my home with warmth and life, replacing the silence that had once seemed permanent. I discovered that cooking for others was not just about nourishment. It was about creating experiences, fostering intimacy, and sharing a piece of myself in a tangible, meaningful way. Gradually, I extended these invitations to family, and eventually my children returned to my table. Watching them enjoy the meals I had carefully prepared and seeing their recognition of the effort, thought, and love I had invested brought an extraordinary sense of fulfillment and reminded me that life could still be rich with connection, meaning, and joy, even after years of solitude. My confidence and creativity flourished as I experimented with new ingredients, techniques, and cuisines. I allowed myself to explore boldly, pushing beyond my comfort zone and finding delight in the sensory details of cooking, the aroma of fresh herbs, the sizzle of a pan, the vibrant colors and textures that turned each dish into an experience. I realized that life itself is composed of these small, beautiful moments, waiting to be noticed, appreciated, and savored fully. Alongside my culinary exploration, I began nurturing my physical and emotional well-being. Daily walks, mindful movement, and attention to how the meals I prepared nourished my body became essential practices. I felt stronger, more energetic, and more capable of engaging fully with life. Caring for myself holistically reinforced the positive changes occurring in my kitchen, creating a sense of balance, vitality, and harmony that I had long overlooked. My approach to life shifted in profound ways. Age became a backdrop for growth, creativity, and exploration rather than a limitation. Each day became an opportunity to experiment, learn, and create. And I discovered that even small acts, performed with care and attention, could yield profound fulfillment. The kitchen remained the heart of my transformation, a space where I exercised agency, nurtured relationships, and cultivated a sense of wonder and presence in the ordinary moments of life. Every meal I prepared, every herb I harvested, every gathering I hosted became a testament to resilience, creativity, and intentional living. I reflected on the years of grief and loneliness, understanding them as essential parts of my journey that had prepared me to embrace life with renewed gratitude and awareness. The qualities I developed, resilience, curiosity, and creativity, became tools I now wield to shape a life rich with purpose, connection, and joy. Each day offered opportunities to deepen my understanding of myself, to engage fully with experiences, and to find beauty in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. The home that once felt empty now hums with life, stories, laughter, and the subtle sounds of cooking, preparation, and shared meals. I take joy in arranging the table, decorating with fresh flowers, and creating an atmosphere of warmth, welcome, and intentional care. Every detail reflects the energy, attention, and love I bring into my space, reminding me that the environments we cultivate shape the quality of our experiences and the relationships we nurture. Through cooking, sharing, and creating, I have discovered the profound truth that joy and purpose are not passively granted, but must be actively cultivated through attention, intention, and care. I see the beauty in mistakes, the growth in challenges, and the celebration in successes, recognizing that all of these elements are essential threads in the tapestry of a fully lived life. Beyond the kitchen, I embrace life with curiosity, creativity, and courage. I explore new activities, nurture long neglected skills, and welcome experiences that expand my perspective and challenge me to grow. The intentionality I developed in the kitchen ripples outward, transforming the way I interact with others, approach personal growth, and experience each day. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have learned that through care, creativity, and connection, we can reclaim life, cultivate joy, and build meaningful experiences, even after profound loss and solitude. Every day offers the opportunity to create, learn, and savor beauty in both the ordinary and extraordinary. My kitchen is more than a room. It is the heart of my transformation, a sanctuary where I continue to nurture, create, and celebrate life. Through these experiences, I have discovered that even the smallest acts, performed with love and intention, can cultivate purpose, joy, and connection, and that life's richness is always available to those willing to step forward, embrace it, and engage fully with their own journey. I never thought that at 63 I would find myself feeling more alive, more curious, and more connected to life than I had in decades. My name is Elaine, and after years of quiet solitude following the passing of my husband and the departure of my children into their own lives, I began a journey that transformed not only my days, but my very sense of who I am. For months, I moved through my home like a shadow of myself, the walls echoing with memories that no longer comforted me, but reminded me of loss. The routines and responsibilities that had once given my life structure, the preparation of meals, the care for family, the small daily acts of attention, were gone, leaving me adrift in silence. I realized one morning that I could not wait for life to find me again. I had to create meaning, connection, and purpose for myself, and I chose to start in the one place that had always been familiar, yet now felt like a sanctuary, my kitchen. I began cautiously, revisiting old cookbooks, testing recipes I had admired but never tried, and allowing myself to experiment freely. The first attempts were imperfect. Soups boiled over, breads failed to rise, and I laughed at my own mistakes. But each attempt reminded me that creation itself was valuable, that learning, failing, and trying again could awaken a sense of purpose I had thought lost forever. Cooking became a meditation, a ritual of presence, and a way to reconnect with myself. Each meal I prepared was an act of care, a way to nurture my body, mind, and spirit. As I immersed myself in this practice, I noticed subtle transformations. My energy returned, my mood lifted, and the heaviness that had weighed on me for months began to dissipate. I photographed dishes, took notes, and reflected on the process, not to impress anyone, but to honor the work I was doing and the growth I was experiencing. Each small success strengthened my confidence and reminded me that I was capable of shaping my life, of finding joy and meaning, even after profound loss. Encouraged by these changes, I invited friends over, first one or two at a time, and watched the magic that came from sharing what I had created. Their laughter, conversation, and appreciation filled the house, replacing the silence that had once seemed permanent. I realized that cooking for others was not just about nourishment, but about creating experiences, fostering intimacy, and sharing a piece of myself in a tangible, meaningful way. These gatherings gradually expanded to include family, and eventually my children returned to my table. Seeing them enjoy the meals I prepared and acknowledging the care I had invested brought a sense of fulfillment I had not thought possible. I recognized that even after years of solitude, life could still be rich with connection, meaning, and joy. My confidence and creativity flourished as I experimented with new ingredients, techniques, and cuisines. I allowed myself to explore boldly, embracing the process as much as the results. I found delight in the sensory experiences, the aroma of fresh herbs, the sizzle of a pan, the vibrant colors and textures of a dish, and understood that life itself is composed of small, beautiful moments, waiting to be noticed, appreciated, and savored. Alongside my culinary adventures, I nurtured my physical and emotional well-being. Daily walks, intentional movement, and attention to how the meals I prepared nourished my body reinforced a sense of vitality and balance that had long been absent. I felt stronger, more alert, and more capable of engaging fully with life. Caring for myself holistically amplified the positive changes I was cultivating in the kitchen. creating harmony between body, mind, and spirit. The approach I took to my days shifted profoundly. Age was no longer a limitation, but a backdrop for creativity, growth, and exploration. Each day became an opportunity to experiment, learn, and create. And I discovered that even the smallest acts, performed with care and intention, could yield deep fulfillment. The kitchen became the heart of this transformation, a space where I exercised agency, nurtured relationships, and cultivated a sense of wonder in ordinary moments. Every meal I prepared, every herb I harvested, and every gathering I hosted became a testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of intentional living. I reflected on the years of grief and loneliness, understanding them as essential parts of my journey that had prepared me to embrace life with renewed awareness and gratitude. The qualities I developed, resilience, curiosity, and creativity, became tools I now wield to shape a life rich with purpose, connection, and joy. Each day offered opportunities to deepen my understanding of myself, to engage fully with experiences, and to find beauty in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. The home that once felt empty now thrums with life, stories, laughter, and the subtle sounds of cooking, preparation, and shared meals. I take pleasure in arranging the table, decorating with fresh flowers, and creating an atmosphere of warmth, welcome, and intentional care. Each detail reflects the energy, attention, and love I bring into my space, reminding me that the environments we cultivate influence the quality of our experiences and the connections we nurture. Through cooking, sharing, and creating, I discovered the profound truth that joy and purpose are not given passively, but must be cultivated through attention, intention, and care. I see beauty in mistakes, growth in challenges, and celebration in successes, recognizing that all of these are essential threads in the tapestry of a fully lived life. Beyond the kitchen, I embrace life with curiosity, creativity, and courage. I explore new activities, nurture skills I had long neglected, and welcome experiences that expand my perspective and challenge me to grow. The intentionality I cultivated in the kitchen ripples outward, transforming my interactions with others, my approach to personal growth, and the way I experience each day. I am Elaine, 63 years old, and I have learned that through care, creativity, and connection, life can be reclaimed, enriched, and celebrated, even after profound loss and solitude. Every day offers the opportunity to create, learn, and savor beauty in both the ordinary and extraordinary. My kitchen is more than a room. It is the heart of my transformation, a sanctuary where I continue to nurture, create, and celebrate life. Through these experiences, I have discovered that even the smallest acts, performed with love and intention, can cultivate purpose, joy, and connection, and that life's richness is always available to those willing to step forward, embrace it, and engage fully with their own journey. I have learned that the power to rebuild, to rediscover, and to thrive is not something we wait for. It is something we actively create each day. I continue to wake with anticipation, to experiment, to share, and to savor the moments that make life vibrant and meaningful. Each day is an invitation to grow, to care, and to celebrate, and I choose to accept it fully, grateful for the journey I have taken and the endless possibilities that remain before me. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can find a little warmth and hope in these stories too.